and welcome to Planet Plipcam. This is the third episode of my Viking Kattegat park, and in today's episode we are building Norse figures. Now recently I've been playing lots and lots of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and in that game there are quite a few big statues of gods or people who have done well in battle, so I thought I'd replicate those in Kattegat in my Planet Coaster console park. So you'll have some time-lapse footage and then some real-time looks at these builds. And if you do enjoy this video, obviously liking really helps out the channel so more people can view this content. And if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. So if you have seen previous episodes, you will have seen that I have already made a stone statue which was inspired by wicks. It was almost like a Thor character, very grey, and it stands by the entrance being worshipped by the Vikings. So I've built one before, I've got a bit of experience, and I knew that you could make these from all of the adventure pieces. And we're going to have a look at the first one which I made, which is a very tall Viking with lots of hair. So I searched on the Planet Coaster workshop for the PC version, and then I saw that it was definitely achievable to get different styles of Vikings out of these adventure pieces. So I nabbed some ideas and I got building, and first of all I had to establish the skin colour of the head of the Viking. So I worked on the head to start with, and then I moved on to the facial hair using the spiky pieces which are almost meant to be used for a bird, I think. And then the eyes, we went for fully black eyes since you can't colour the eyes two-tone. And then I did use the Valkyrie helmet from the World's Fair DLC. And then I had to choose a torso, and I did go for the body that had almost an 8-pack. A very strong Viking is this tall one. He's got all the abs, and I coloured it just so it's like some uniform, just so he can be looked up to, and he looks really grandiose. And I really do think he could fit somewhere in the park nicely. So as the build progressed, I added some bare arms, which were quite difficult to place to get them to look right, like they weren't just plonked on the side of him. But it looks good with the cuffs because I think they look like oath rings that Vikings having in how they had, where they swore an oath to their leader. And then up next we went to the back of the head, and it's almost a ponytail with his really long hair. Certainly in Vikings the series, Bjorn has hair shaved to his skin from the neck to the earline, so it's a bit more hair than R9 Ronaldo, but certainly if I were going to make some more models, I certainly want to get that hairstyle in. Up next I had the task of adding some legs, so I used the long skirt kind of piece, which just does look like a tunic really, and again I coloured it to look like armour, look like leather on his legs. So it really added some height to these legs, and it will certainly dominate over the land when I place it right in the middle of the park. So then I had to add something into his hands. I couldn't leave his hands empty, so then I placed an anchor, but then in the end I scrapped that idea. I didn't like that. It needed to be big, something lifelike to his size. So in the end I used a chain with a flail on the end, and I used basic shapes to create that flail end. I also placed a staff in his hand just so he could walk. Since he's very tall, I think he might need something so he doesn't fall over. Now something to mention, if you are wondering if you've missed out on an episode of Kattegat, don't worry, the backdrop to these characters is not going to be part of the park. I just built this for scenery for this build. I just had a quick play with the terrain and the rocks, added a waterfall, a bridge and some foliage. So don't worry, you haven't missed out on anything. That is just for the scenery behind the statues. So now we're going into real time to just have a 360 look at this. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Yes, it is a bit tall, but I think it will go nicely in the park, certainly over the water, which you have not yet seen in Kattegat, but I am really looking forward to placing them down in the Valhalla section of my park. So then, moving on to the next statue which we are making. Now this one's sitting down just like my grey kind of Thor statue that I made previously in the episodes, and I've used different pieces for this one to the taller Viking. So this one's got a bare chest and it's got some kind of medallion necklace on. I've coloured that how I wanted it, gold for some kind of chain and then the black to give it some depth. It's got a grey tunic. And then also I needed to cover this up with some rocks, as I didn't like that you couldn't colour the base of the what he was sitting on. You couldn't colour it, so I had to add some rocks just to make it look more realistic, because really having the skin colour looked awful really, as you can see at the moment. So we add the arms, and again it looks really good with the rings around his arms. And then on top of the head we prepare for adding a helmet, a Viking helmet, which is commonly known as a myth, how they had all of the horns on them. Usually a big myth that's usually debunked by historians, but we prepare for the head dress by just adding some features to the face, getting the beard sorted before moving on to the helmet, which, yes, I am happy with the helmet, but certainly maybe I look at it later in other episodes. It does look a bit rounded and not too, it doesn't look like metal how it should do, let's say. So just sorting out the beard here, adding a mouth. I was going to put a tongue in this mouth, but then I didn't want it to look so much like the adventure blueprints that we were given. I really had to add some texture onto the beard, so I used these circles that you will have seen into the beard just to add some texture. I did find the pieces of the adventure pack really useful, and as you see, I've made a shield out of the adventure pieces. I've had to make it a bit smaller than how Anglesnap wanted it to be, and I've coloured it nicely so it works perfectly for a Viking shield. I added the metal pieces, which were also used earlier in the series off some of my shields placed around the park, and they've been placed on top of the shield just to give it some more depth, and I've removed the coal pieces as they weren't playing up for me, so that's how that went. So as you've seen, I added the rocks to cover over the seat, which I couldn't colour to the right colour. It was the skin colour, which didn't look realistic. And then I've added a sword into his hand. Yes, the sword is a little bit small, but I'm happy enough with that. So now moving into the helmet, I've had to use multiple pieces for this helmet, kind of helmet build. And yeah, I wasn't the most happy with this, but I've added the horns. I did think of using these in-game horns, but then I did decide on using the beak pieces in the adventure pack to act as the horns. I've coloured those as realistic as I could to some kind of ivory, I don't know, some tusks of whatever they captured. And that was pretty much the helmet done. I had some ears with some of the earpieces that were in game, and then I make some shoes for the Viking. I didn't want him barefooted because the other one was barefooted, so I just needed some variation there. So here's a quick 360 of the 3 that I have built so far in Kattegat Park. I do like how they look. You can see an archer on the floor. He is archer scale, so you can see how big they are compared to the guests. Very, very big. So now let's get into the final statue that I'm making in this episode. I'm not saying I'm going to not be making any more. I certainly have some other ideas when I place them in the park. Maybe they need some companions next to them in Valhalla, but this is the final one. This is a bit more abstract. This is a really shiny one, so I've used beard pieces and they've worked really, really nicely to make a curly beard. This silver statue, it reflects really, really nicely with the fire. I placed some fire in his hand so we can really capitalise on that reflection factor. I've swiveled around one of the heads of the skeleton kind of pieces in the adventure pack, and that has been placed so we can get a nice headdress for this Viking kind of helmet. Next, I've added some kind of chains. These chains go around, and then I've swiveled one round so it's like a little pendant on top of the chain. I chose some quite mythical legs for this statue. It has quite cool claws on the bottom and sticky outy legs, and then I used the straight arms with a nice torch in his hand, and that finishes off the third statue in this video. So now we're going to go very shortly into a real-time section so we can see and compare them all in the little world that I've created. So here you go then, all of the characters that I've made in this episode along with the other one that I made before episode 1. So ranking these, I do like the tall one, the one we made first in today's episode, the best, followed by the second one really. They are in order, just because that shield is a new way to look at making shields. I really like how I did that, because previously I had to use really basic shapes which had awful reflections, as you can see on the Thor-like structure there. So that rounds off the video. This was episode 3 of Kattegat. Now if you are new to the channel, then please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of this series and my other Missouri's Gardens Park. We also do tutorials on this channel, so don't forget to check those out too. Please like the video, I hope you've enjoyed it, and it's a goodbye from me.